December 2024 arrived in Bremerton, Washington, with a biting chill that clung to the Puget Sound. The morning temperature dropped to 38 degrees as a heavy mist settled over the naval shipyard. Gray water lapped against the concrete piers where families gathered in thick winter coats. They were waiting for a silhouette that had defined American power since the mid-1970s. Slowly, the USS Nimitz, a 100,000-ton steel island, emerged from the haze to conclude its final journey. This ship was commissioned in 1975, a time when the world looked very different than it does today. For nearly 5 decades, she has been the oldest nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in the United States fleet. Her final operational chapter began unceremoniously on March 26, when she slipped out of San Diego Bay. The sailors of Carrier Wing 17 stood along the flight deck as the California coastline faded away. This 9-month deployment would take them across the vast expanse of the Indo-Pacific Command. By April, the strike group reached the tropical humidity of Guam for a scheduled port call. But the mission took a somber turn when a sailor was reported missing within the island's vicinity. For 5 long days, search teams scanned the Pacific swells, but the sea kept its secrets. The Navy suspended the search, and the Nimitz had to continue its march toward the Philippine Sea. In those waters, they joined forces with a destroyer from the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. In mid-May, the strike group navigated the narrow, crowded lanes of the Strait of Malacca. They made a brief operational stop in Malaysia, the heat radiating off the steel decks in the midday sun. By June, the mission shifted toward the volatile landscape of the Middle East. The Nimitz arrived in the Arabian Sea on the very day Operation Midnight Hammer commenced. The U.S. launched targeted strikes against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities that afternoon. While the USS Carl Vinson departed the region in July, the Nimitz remained behind under Central Command. In August, the carrier visited Bahrain, marking the first such visit by a U.S. carrier in 5 years. However, the most testing day of the deployment occurred on October 26 in the South China Sea. At 1400 hours, an F/A-18F Super Hornet fighter jet suddenly lost altitude and crashed into the sea. The flight deck was a flurry of yellow and red jerseys as emergency protocols were triggered. Just 30 minutes later, an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter also went down in a separate incident. The radio chatter was thick with tension as rescue swimmers jumped into the churning wake. Miraculously, every crew member from both aircraft was pulled from the water alive. The wreckage of those multi-million-dollar machines was finally recovered in early December. As the Nimitz turned toward home, she made one last stop at the hollowed waters of Pearl Harbor. On December 7th, she departed San Diego for the final leg of her 5-decade career. Now, at 333 meters long, she sits quietly in the cold waters of Bremerton. The decommissioning process, beginning in 2024, marks the end of an era for naval engineering. While the USS George Washington takes her place in the Pacific, the Nimitz prepares for her final rest. Her name will soon join the rolls of the great ships that served their country until the very end. The stories of thousands of sailors are now etched into the steel of this 100,000-ton monument. As the sun set over Bremerton, the lights of the Nimitz flickered one last time against the dark water.
If you want to hear vivid stories from the U.S. every day, please subscribe and like.